Welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled to have you with us because today we are exploring a truly fascinating source document.
It really is.
Yeah, it's this comprehensive historical and cultural report focused entirely on Funabashi City, which sits right on the edge of Tokyo Bay in Chiba Prefecture, Japan.
Right, just outside Tokyo.
Exactly. And look, if you are an avid traveler or a history buff or just someone obsessed with how places forge their unique identities, you are going to love this. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is threefold. First, we are going to unearth the incredible historical stories of Funabashi. Second, we are going to reveal the physical hidden gems that you can actually visit today to touch that history.
The physical landmarks, yeah.
Right. And third, we are going to trace the powerful, enduring shogunate or craftsman spirit that seems to completely define this city.
And setting the stage here, it is crucial to point out that the sources we're looking at today, they don't just present a standard dry timeline of a Japanese municipality.
No, not at all.
Funabashi really serves as a microcosm of Japan's entire evolution. It's a place that has historically sat on the geographic and political edge, yet it constantly, almost stubbornly transforms its limitations into incredible hubs of innovation.
It really does.
What's fascinating here is that the city's long history of survival and precision and adaptation can actually teach you a lot about resilience and mastery in your own life. It's less of a history lesson and more of a blueprint for navigating immense change.
A blueprint for navigating change is exactly what I took away from these sources, especially looking at the early geography. I mean, I was reading the sections on the ancient origins, and the landscape seemed almost alien compared to today.
Completely different, yeah.
What was this area actually like, say, 30,000 years ago?
Well, if you were standing there during the Paleolithic era, you wouldn't be looking at city streets. You'd be looking out over the Natsumi mudflats.
Just a massive wetland.
Right. And by the Jomon period, this area was a massive inner sea. As the ocean slowly retreated over millennia, it left behind this incredibly chaotic, muddy, shifting wetland. And that geological reality sets up the legendary origin of the city's name.
Right, the story of the mythical hero Yamato Takeru.
Exactly. So the legend goes that Yamato Takeru was on his eastern expedition, essentially trying to expand political control, and he hits a massive wall.
The wide, muddy Ibi River.
Yes. He simply could not get his army across it. It was too wide, too soft. So the local residents stepped in to solve this massive logistical nightmare. They lined up a series of small boats side by side and laid wooden planks straight across them to create a bridge of boats.
Literally a Funabashi.
Literally Funa meaning boat and Bashi meaning bridge.
It sounds like a myth, but the sources mention that historical texts actually back up this concept, right?
Yes. Texts like the Azuma Kagami confirm the name was formalized by the Kamakura period. But beyond the mythic loss, this story represents a profound moment of early human engineering.
Because they couldn't build a normal bridge.
Right. These early residents could not build a permanent bridge on that soft shifting mud. The ground simply wouldn't hold it. So they overcame their geological limits by turning a natural barrier into a manageable technological space.
They used buoyancy.
They used buoyancy and modular design to solve a problem that brute force couldn't fix. Naming the city Funabashi was a symbol of bringing infrastructure and order and eventually political power to a very chaotic wetland environment.
And what's incredible is that physical pieces of this history are still marked in the city today. Like if you are walking through Funabashi now, you can cross the modern Ibi River Bridge. Right there, you'll find a stone monument marking the birthplace of the city's name.
It's a great spot to visit.
It really is. And they even designed the bridge rails to look like the bows of Edo period Godoriki boats, which perfectly captures that water crossing legacy. And to really grasp the scale of those ancient mudflats, the newly reopened Funabashi City Historical Museum has these amazing topographical projections.
Oh, those are fantastic.
You can visually watch the lost mudflats shape the modern city grid. It's wild.
It really contextualizes the landscape. You see how they tamed the water. And that mastery over the environment takes on a whole new level of intensity when we move forward into the Edo period starting in the 1600s.
When the shogun gets involved.
Exactly. The great unifier, Tokugawa Ieyasu, establishes the shogunate in Edo, which is modern-day Tokyo, and he desperately needs to secure a premium food supply for his castle.
For the elite.
Right. He looks to Funabashi with its calm bay and rich marine life and designates it as an osora. This was a highly privileged fishing ground dedicated exclusively to supplying fresh seafood to the shogun's kitchen.
That sounds like an intense amount of pressure, catching dinner for the most powerful man in the country. But I have to ask, based on your read of the sources, were these fishermen operating out of genuine pride, or was it just pure fear of the shogun's authority?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it was a very complex political contract, and it evolved into deep pride. In exchange for exclusive fishing rights in the bay, these fishermen were bound to deliver absolute perfection.
And you don't get perfection just by being scared.
Exactly. You don't achieve that kind of perfection through fear alone. You achieve it through mastery. They couldn't just cast nets blindly. The source documents describe how they had to meticulously map the ocean floor without any modern technology.
No sonar, no GPS.
None. They memorized every deep current, known as Miyo. They learned the exact water temperatures, the tidal poles, and used visual markers on the distant shoreline to triangulate their position so they could locate specific shellfish beds and shrimp breeding grounds.
So they were basically human sonar systems.
They really were. This relentless demand for supreme quality, knowing your environment down to the millimeter, is what birthed the city's deep-rooted shogunate or craftsman spirit. It gave the community a system of self-governance and professional pride that elevated their daily work from simple manual labor into an honorable, vital craft.
And you can still visit the physical echoes of this era. Tucked away in the modern city is the Funabashi Toshogu Shrine. It is famously one of the absolute smallest Toshogu shrines in all of Japan, built directly on the ruins of the actual lodging palace Tokugawa Ieyasu used when he visited.
It's a tiny footprint, but huge historical weight.
Huge weight, yeah. And not far from there is the Okura Inari Shrine, sitting exactly where the storehouses for those tribute goods used to be. It feels like a slice of Edo history preserved right in the modern streets.
But that preservation wasn't easy. The transition from a community of sea craftsmen to a modern city was tested in the most violent way possible.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the year 1868. The sources detail a massive turning point. But for those listening who might not be Japanese history experts, what exactly was the Boshin War setting off here?
The Boshin War was a brutal civil war. Essentially, the era of the shogun was collapsing, and forces loyal to the ruling shogunate were fighting against a new government army seeking to return supreme political power to the imperial court.
A nationwide conflict over modernization.
Right, it was a nationwide conflict over the future of Japan's modernization.
And that war spilled right into the streets of Funabashi. Pro-shogunate resistance forces clashed with the new Meiji government army. It turned into brutal hand-to-hand combat, and to flesh out the resistance, the new government forces set fire.
Devastating fire.
Fanned by strong winds, the blaze wiped out 814 houses. It completely destroyed the ancient Funabashi Daijingu Shrine, which had stood for a millennium.
The destruction was near total. But the aftermath is a masterclass in swift political maneuvering and urban resilience. Just days after the fighting stopped, the new government sent an envoy with an influx of 3,000 ryo of gold to rebuild the city.
That's a massive injection of funds.
Massive.
Yeah.
But instead of just replacing what was lost, they used the disaster of the fire to completely wipe out the chaotic, tangled Edo period street layout. The ashes cleared the way for modern, highly efficient railway and street networks.
The ultimate blank slate. And out of those ashes came the rebuilt Funabashi Daijingu Shrine. When you visit the shrine grounds today, you see something totally unexpected.
The Tomio-de.
Yes, the lighthouse. Right. It is a unique lighthouse that blends traditional Japanese aesthetics with Western architectural styles. It stands as this stunning visual metaphor for a city caught between the ancient and the modern.
And the human element of that transition is equally striking. The sources note a poignant detail about the commander of the defeated pro-shogunate forces, a man named Ibara Suzaburo.
The guy who fought against the new government.
Yes, he actually survived that brutal battle, went into hiding, changed his name to Ibara Soroku, and eventually became one of the most famous educators of the Meiji era.
Wow.
He even founded a prominent middle school. His personal journey perfectly mirrors Funabashi's journey, an incredible resilient shift from fierce military resistance to cultural enlightenment and modernization.
That same resilience the city showed in rebuilding its streets and allowing former enemies to rebuild their lives is exactly what drew our next figure to its borders in the 1930s.
Osamu Dazai.
Yes, the sources highlight the story of the incredibly famous but deeply troubled Japanese author Osamu Dazai. He was trying to escape the intense pressures of the Tokyo literary world, and he was struggling with a severe addiction to a painkiller called Pavanol after an appendicitis surgery. Why did he choose Funabashi of all places?
Funabashi in the 1930s acted as what the report calls a buffer zone. It was close enough to the capital, Tokyo, to be accessible, but far enough away to offer an escape.
A place to breathe.
Right. It had a grassroots, slightly gritty, secular energy that embraced marginalized, broken souls. It didn't judge him. He rented a newly built house, worked on seminal writing like his first short story collection in the late years, and developed a borderline obsessive, emotionally dependent relationship with an oleander tree planted in his yard.
What's incredible is that the physical evidence of his time here wasn't erased by modern development. You can walk to the Kokono Bridge over the Ibi River, which features Dazai's portrait and a beautiful relief dedicated to his famous work, Run Melos. And that oleander tree he was so attached to, it survived. In 1983, it was carefully transplanted to the front of the Funabashi Central Community Center. You can go stand under the exact tree that anchored one of Japan's greatest writers during his darkest days.
That tree is a living testament to the city's character. When Dazai was eventually forced to leave Funabashi because of his mounting debts, historical accounts say he openly wept over that oleander tree, calling Funabashi his most beloved city.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. But it proves this profound capacity the city has to absorb people going through massive personal transitions, offering them a space to struggle, create, and eventually heal.
But moving into the 1990s and early 2000s, the city that acted as a safe harbor for so many people suddenly needed saving itself.
The reclamation plans.
Yes. By this point, the Tokyo Bay coastline had become heavily industrialized. The local government rolled out a massive plan to pave right over the Sanbanze, which was the very last remaining shallow mudflat ecosystem in the entire bay. But the citizens of Funabashi fought back. They gathered 300,000 signatures and formed a massive human chain along the water.
This raises an important question. How exactly did a group of ordinary citizens manage to defeat a massive, well-funded bureaucratic machine? Because the government was pushing extremely hard for this development.
They usually win those fights.
They do. The answer lies in what the report calls craftsman-like environmentalism.
What does craftsman-like environmentalism actually look like in practice?
It means they didn't just go out and shout slogans or wave signs. They approached the protest with the same intense precision as those Edo period fishermen mapping the seafloor.
They became experts.
Exactly. The citizens gathered rigorous scientific data. They conducted their own complex water quality monitoring. For example, they meticulously documented and analyzed phenomena like the blue tide.
Just to clarify for our listeners, what exactly is a blue tide?
A blue tide occurs when strong offshore winds push the surface water of the bay out to sea. This causes deep, heavily polluted, oxygen-starved water to rise up to the surface to replace it.
That sounds bad.
It is. It turns the water a milky blue color, but it is deadly. It suffocates fish and shellfish en masse. The citizens of Funabashi mapped out exactly how further land reclamation would worsen these blue tides. On top of the science, they did deep, sophisticated legal research, finding loopholes and contradictions in the government's development plans.
They fought the bureaucracy with undeniable localized expertise.
They used data and science as their primary weapons, and it worked. In 2001, the reclamation plan was officially scrapped.
That is amazing.
It is a profound modern reflection of that Edo-era Osora mindset. It proved the sea is not a commodity to be extracted or paved over. It is a precious resource that requires precise, active stewardship.
And if you are visiting, you can experience the results of their fight. The Sanbanze Environment Learning Center is a landmark where you can learn all about the biodiversity they saved. In the springtime, you can even participate in traditional clam digging right on the mudflats, interacting directly with the ecosystem the citizens protected.
It is a beautiful full-circle moment. The citizens became the new craftsmen of the bay. And what is perhaps most surprising in these sources is how this craftsman's spirit, this intense focus on quality, autonomy, and deep understanding, is manifesting right now in a completely different arena.
Yes, looking ahead to the 2026 Milan Olympics, the traditional shogunate spirit has surprisingly found a home in modern elite sports. There is a state-of-the-art facility called the Mitsui Fudosan Ice Park Funabashi, which houses the elite MF Figure Skating Academy.
An incredible facility.
And their track record is staggering. This academy served as a crucial training ground for the 2026 Olympic gold medalist, the American skater Alysa Liu, who ended a 24-year medal drought for U.S. women. And right alongside her local Japanese talent, Ami Nakai took home the bronze.
The success rate of this academy is phenomenal, and the source text breaks down exactly why it is happening in Funabashi. The head coach, Kinsuke Nakanima, enforces a remarkably strict craftsman philosophy. While other international training centers push athletes to exhaustion with endless repetitions, he allows only 3 hours of ice time a day.
only 3 hours.
It is an absolute demand for quality over quantity
How does limiting practice time create Olympic champions?
because it forces intentionality. He requires his skaters to deeply understand the physical biomechanical logic of every single move they make. They aren't just doing 100 jumps until their knees give out. They are studying their center of gravity, the specific angle of their skate blade, and the physics of their momentum. They have to understand the why behind the movement.
It's that shokunin mindset again, deeply understanding your tools just like the fisherman mapping the currents.
Precisely. And Alysa Liu's story is the perfect embodiment of this. She was a child prodigy who actually retired at age 16 because of the immense pressure and lack of control over her own career.
Right, she stepped away completely.
But when she decided to come back and train in environments like Funabashi, she did so with total autonomy. She took control over her routine, her music, her body, and her schedule. The report argues this perfectly mirrors the ultimate shokunin ideal, shifting from being a passive tool directed by others to becoming an active, self-governing master of your own craft.
From a prodigy overwhelmed by the system to a master craftsman on the ice. So what does this all mean? We've gone from ancient mudflats and shogun-era fishermen mapping the sea to burning shrines, a brilliant writer in exile, environmental scientists fighting the government, and Olympic gold medalists mastering physics. How do you tie all of these seemingly disparate stories together?
If we look at the meta-analysis of all these source texts, a clear pattern emerges. Funabashi consistently turns its status as an edge city into a hub advantage. Over centuries, the city evolved from merely extracting resources like catching fish for the shogun to refining them.
Refining the data, refining the athletes.
Exactly. Whether that is refining scientific data to save a bay or refining world-class athletes on the ice, everything is driven by an underlying resilience and a constant, almost obsessive pursuit of extreme precision and quality.
It is the shokunin spirit surviving fires, wars, and time, just changing its shape to fit the era. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. We hope you've enjoyed exploring Funabashi's history, uncovering the physical pieces of the past you can still visit, and learning about a culture that flat out refuses to compromise on quality.
I will leave you with this final thought building on the underlying theme of everything we have discussed today. The shokunin spirit we've traced from Edo fishermen to Olympic skaters is fundamentally about a deep, tactile, physical mastery of the world around you. It is about understanding the ocean currents or the friction of an ice skate blade better than anyone else.
Right, a physical connection.
But as we move rapidly into an era dominated by artificial intelligence automation and remote work, where machines are increasingly doing the heavy lifting and the data processing for us, it makes you wonder. What happens to the shokunin spirit when the physical tools of our trades disappear? In a fast-paced, hyper-connected world where you don't have to map the ocean floor yourself, where is your buffer space? Where do you go to stop being a passive participant and start taking true craftsman-like ownership of your own life?